Oh, okay. So then kind of a transition, we're going to be talking about joins now. So joins are pretty interesting. And so because of that, I'm going to be making two new tables because joins involve multiple tables, right? And where it's kind of getting data for multiple tables, and this will make sense when we show the example. Um, we're sort of taking data from multiple tables that are connected in some sort of way. Um, and that'll make sense when you show it. So first, I'm just going to create this table of customers. So moved on from employees. Now we're in customers. And similar, we have an ID, we have a name, we have an age and an email, just because. Um, and we can insert these values. So that makes sense. Nothing new so far. You can see the table. But then we have a second table now. Oh, so the orders. So our second table is orders. Um, and just one thing to note is I wanted to mention that this ID, it doesn't have to be like the auto incrementing like 1, 2, 3, 4, like I was showing before. Because for example, if you were storing, let's say like UF students, there might be some what's called a natural key, some sort of natural field of it that is going to be unique and identifying, and everyone's going to have one. So for example, for UF students, we could use like UFID because everyone has a UFID and everyone's UFID is different. So you could use that naturally as an identifier. Like you wouldn't want to use someone's name, of course, because a name could be not unique. But if you have like some sort of natural field that is unique and everyone will have, then it makes sense to use it. Or at least you can use it. Some people advocate, actually, they say it's not like you should always use an auto incrementing ID. They don't like natural keys, but that's like kind of a design choice. You do have that option. Um, and so these are orders. So you have some ID for like the order number, a quantity, what customer purchased them, and so like some product, theoretically, like what product they're buying. And now this is interesting. This is something new. So we have this sort of, so this is a constraint. So we have foreign key customer ID references customer's ID. So that's kind of like a lot of like a weird line. It's weird to read, but all it means is that just that this customer ID field is just referencing the ID field of the customer's table. So that just means that this two corresponds to the ID of Bob and the one corresponds to the ID of Alice, right? And these are just inserting these values into the table here. But the foreign key field, and as we mentioned before when we were talking about the constraints, this foreign key like constraint is really useful because if we didn't have this, we could still use the 211 and just sort of know that it references the customer's table. But because we have this foreign key constraint, it's actually enforced by SQL. So for example, if we try to insert this like record where the three, right, customer ID is the third field. So this three is a customer ID, and there's no record in the customer's table with an ID of three. So this won't be allowed because it'll check and it'll say there's no customer ID of three. And so it'll give us an error. So that's useful, right? The constraints will be enforced, but that's not a join yet. So um, moving on to the actual thing, once we've gotten to, all this info set up, joins are just sort of connecting the two tables. So it's still a select from, but then join on, and on will provide the condition that connects the tables. So we're kind of selecting from two tables at once. So we're selecting the name of the customer, the quantity of an order, and the product ID of the order. And then we're connecting them by saying, whoops, we're connecting them by saying like merge two rows where the customer ID of the order equals the ID of the customer themselves. So we're basically just taking the orders but because of this like join on, we're able to connect the name, right? Because that wasn't in the original orders table. But we're able to connect the name to the order. So that this is the name of the customer, Bob, and the order he made. So 15 and product ID of 219 and Alice with these two orders. So we can see that from before. It's pretty simple, but it's pretty also very powerful. So you could do something more complicated with this. We're just basically, because we see the customer ID of one corresponds to Alice, we can insert Alice's name for those two like rows, right? Does that make sense? Everyone understands? Like, remember the 2 and 14 and the 219 and 114 IDs? That's just what we've created here. And you could do a join on two tables like we just showed, or you could even do, if we had a products table, which we don't, but if we had a products table with like where these product IDs were the primary keys, we could also, connect those and do a join of like three tables, so we can connect the customer's name, the order itself, like the quantity, and then maybe like the product name, right? Based on like connecting the product ID to the products table. So that's pretty interesting and pretty powerful. And that's also how you would do lists, right? Because you can't like naturally store a list like in a column, but if so, customer could of course have multiple orders, but instead of storing their orders directly in the customer's table, you do it by having the orders table and kind of referencing the customer's table and having the information all in like separate tables, and then we can just connect it, like bring it together. But it's not all in one place because that's kind of mixing purposes, like and mixing it together, and it can get very messy. So this is what I mean. This is what we mean when we say SQL or like relational databases have a more like rigid structure where everything's in its like specific tables, like more formatted. Um, and then just so that's all we have for the SQL commands. But I just wanted to mention that these commands are all like things you can type in like for like command line utilities and other places. But if you wanted to actually use it in like an application, you could use like if you want to use it programmatically, right? You could use like other libraries, um, like this one, I think Psycho PG because it's for Postgres to connect to the database and then actually interact with it in your code. So this one's pretty simple. This library is pretty simple because you can just use like directly enter the query string, like select all from employees, and then get those values, right? This is after we deleted Charlie. And so you can do that like in Python, right? Or for other languages. And you can see here we're just connecting to our database and so forth. But that's pretty useful if you want to use it actually in a program instead of just like in the command line. And then even more like kind of built up or more complicated but more structured is something called an object relational mapper or an ORM. And that's specifically mapping like objects to the tables, right? So if we want to actually, instead of just like right back here, we just have it in like tuples. But if we want more like structure and more like, have it typed and like understand what the data looks like, we can connect these class, like this employee class in Python and have that connected to the database itself. So that like ID, name, user experience, salary, it will be filled when we like do a similar, so I'm not showing it because I didn't have enough space for the screenshots, but just with a similar, very, very similar like connect statement, right? To say like we're connecting the database is on a local host. It has this port, this database's name, and so forth. That will connect the class with the database, right? With all the records in the database. And then you can do, if you do this, code where notice now, because we have the class and we have more like Python, more programming way of doing it. Instead of typing the query string directly and having to deal with like the strings, we can actually use these like functions, which is just another thing to learn, where we're selecting from the employee class to mean we're selecting from the table, and then dot where, and then we can provide like instead of in a string, like a programmatic condition, and then we can print them all out in the results, and then you can see the same thing. And because of the condition, we only have Bill, right? So that's how you could actually use it in a real application, or a company could use it in like a real application instead of just like typing out these SQL queries commands on the command line. So that's it from me. Back to, yeah.
All right. And that's it for the relational database. And now I'm going to introduce something called non-relational database. Before we had a strict table setup where in order to add to the table, you need to have exactly the parameters in order to fill the rows, such as inserting. And for this, it's a little bit more flexible. It's similar to on a JSON, how you're able to structure it with nested different components. This is a flexible schema where you're able to have a bunch of different data types as well as inserting it into the database. There's also the various data models, like I was referring to earlier, with graph databases as well as document, which is MongoDB, which is what we're going to be demoing later, as well as graph databases, as well as column databases. And then base compliance stands for basically available and what else?
Basically, the idea is, like, I mean, you can still look it up.
Yeah. It's basically available, a soft state, and eventually consistent. It's just an it's just like an overall statement that it's not as consistent as the ACID databases, just as like SQL, where you can update the database and then it could have like a different or you can update the database and it will not always be consistent because just like ACID, it was consistent because if you make a change and the change cannot go through, such as in a financial statement, it will go negative. The base could allow that because it's basically available, and that just means that it will not update correctly if depending on the use case. Also, some use cases for non-relational database are real-time analytics, as well as long and event storage, big data and machine learning that likes to take unstructured data, as well as social media applications with graph databases that shows just high-level uh, uh, following and follower relationship with the graph database. And now it's time for the demo.
All right. Thank you, Max. Thank you, Kai. It's weird saying my own name. Before we go into the demo, you guys have been waiting long enough. Come grab some pizza. If you want some pizza, just come to the front. We have some candy left over from our Halloween social last week, so grab some of that too. I'd say, should we do one slice right for now? Yeah, we'll say one slice per person for now, and then we can obviously come get seconds afterward. Sorry.
Networking.
Again, I'm assuming you guys have seen this. So if you want to apply, we mentioned this earlier, to our exec board for next semester, we've got some new positions we're opening, and we'd be happy to see you guys join the team. All right. We're going to get started with the workshop now, or the demo. Sorry, we have been doing the workshop. Turn on the screen. All right. So essentially, the goal of this demo here is to get a MongoDB cluster set up and create an application that will link to that cluster, right? Pretty simple stuff. And it's honestly like just something you can set up really easily, right? So this will take like 10, maybe 15 minutes max. This isn't something that's like super duper, you know, like it's actually like, it sounds difficult. It sounds intimidating, but it's not. It's something you can set up really quickly, and then you can like expand the kind of boilerplate you're getting here into really whatever you need this database for. So it's super useful, you know, in so many applications. Obviously, we discussed some of them previously, and it's actually pretty simple to set up. So that being said, we're first going to start with a template. It's mostly just boilerplate for the front end, like the HTML here, just so we don't have to type out our own web page. And what we're going to do is, if you're in the Discord, pull up this doc so you can get these commands. You can copy paste them. It's a little easier. If you're not in the Discord, ufsec.org will work. It'll link you there. But regardless, even if you are on the doc, you can just type out in a terminal where you want to clone this repo, git clone, and then this link, which I'm honestly just going to paste in. Again, if you're in the Discord, go to the meeting announcements channel, and just in the meeting announcements channel, we've posted this doc. If you want to follow along, copy everything in, just, you know, pull up the doc. Okay, and so what I'm doing here is I just have VS Code set up, and VS Code comes with an integrated terminal, so I can run commands here. Yes, Lunch Buddies is there. So right now I've just, you know, cloned this folder, right? Basically taken the template and put it onto my local machine. If I type in cd sec db workshop template, now autocorrect, yes. It'll take me to the folder where this stuff is actually stored. And let me actually open it so I don't get confused. Here we go. So everything's a little more streamlined. So these are if you're following along, these are the files you should have. First thing we should do, so this comes with a package lock. And this is why we wanted you to install Node at the start, because, or npm, where's terminal? Here. Because what this essentially is doing is, oh man, what did I do to my terminal? Here. What this is doing is giving us some packages, which just make development a lot easier. And they're kind of recorded in this package lock. And by typing npm-i, we're just going to install them locally. They'll go into this node modules folder. And it just makes setting up a backend much, much faster, much, much easier. So let's look into our server.js file here. I guess we can do Mongo first. So if you go to the link in the doc here, cloud.mongodb.com, and if it'll load, if you log in, you should be able to go, like, literally click this here, and you'll get taken to a project page. Well, I can't really delete that one. But you can create a project here. So test workshop project. This is pretty easy. Just go through everything, right? You have to just create the project, wait for it to load, yada, yada. And then here, once it's created, there's kind of like a lot of menus you have to go through with MongoDB, but that's the hardest part. Once it's set up, it's easy. So here, you create a cluster. Make sure you click this one on the right, that's free. I don't think I have like my credit card info. I don't know what it would do, but it probably won't work. So stick to the free one. We'll just go with default settings. No CAPTCHA, thank God. Okay, so this is important. You want to copy your credentials here, especially this password. I think you don't quite need it if everything works right, but make sure you have this recorded down because this is how you're actually, what the heck, going to be interfacing with the database, right? You don't want anyone to just like connect to your database, start reading data. Yeah. Yes, new project in the top right. Yeah, you don't want anyone, and yeah, if you just have questions, sorry, just raise your hand. I'm happy to pause, make sure everyone's caught up. You don't want anyone just like reading and writing your database. So having a password that only you can use on your host is kind of how you want to set that up. But anyway, you have to click create user and then choose a connection method. And since we're using Node.js, we're actually going to use this top option here for drivers. And now we wait. In the meantime, let's create an env file. So basically what an env file is, you don't see something here, but the issue with having like a GitHub repo, right? Say you want to store this like sensitive data, like this password to your database. But if it's like on a GitHub repo, then that means like anyone can see it and anyone can take it and anyone can use it for malpractice. Say you have like a site hosted somewhere and like someone gets the key from that hosting or like the database key password from the hosting, they can screw up the entire functionality of your site. So what we do is we use something called a .env file. So to create it, just like make a new file inside this folder, literally .env. And so this is to store environment variables. And you can see here also we have a git ignore. If you're not familiar with a git ignore, basically what this does is whenever you push code up to GitHub, it will choose to ignore the files. It will not commit the files inside of this git ignore. So here we choose not to commit the node modules folder because this is through npm. We can just install locally these things through the package doc. So all of these random folders, all of these files, we don't have to push up to the repo. That'll just make downloading a lot more difficult. And we also include the .env because again, this is where you want to put your secrets and you don't want to be pushing that up to the cloud. So let's see if this is loaded. It's still not loaded. Unlucky. We'll wait a little longer. In the meantime, let's talk about what's in our server.js file. So this code here has already gotten us essentially connected to our MongoDB database. This is all it requires. So here we have a few imports, nothing crazy to worry about. This express line will start or is used to kind of configure our backend. And really the main part that's pertinent here is we're importing our connection string. This is how you import from the .env file. And then we're just using the MongoDB package from our package.json in order to like create a Mongo client. And then that's literally like it. We pass it in the URL to our Mongo collection, and then it will just like work. So again, this is just some like stuff to ensure that anyone can like access our backend, but hopefully this is working. Oh, dude, it says 10 to 15 seconds. I'm not sure about that one. Oh, there we go. Okay. So if you didn't copy your password earlier, this password here may not show up. So that's why it's important to have it copied earlier. But ultimately, this is like the important string we need. This is what we need to connect to our database. So in our env file, we can like copy this over. Basically, this is using the Atlas URI like variable name. So we need to set that variable equal to something, which is going to be our connection string here. So if I paste my connection string in here, again, we're essentially just defining that variable inside of this file so that we can import it into the other files without that exact variable value getting pushed up to GitHub. That's all this is doing. But now we have the URI getting imported into the server.js file, which means that we can make a Mongo client off of it. All right, let's get into the code. So currently this doesn't really do anything. This is just running some setup. We're going to start by, well, actually, we're going to start by, I'm going to click this go live button. Oh, wait, hold on. There we go. This is how our site will look. This is something called live server, which basically will just take this HTML and make it so when you save it, it'll automatically refresh. Usually you have to like refresh manually, but I don't want to do that. Again, it's an alternative, so you don't need this. You can literally just like go into your file explorer and like open this in your browser and it'll work. You just have to keep refreshing every time, and I don't want to do that, so I won't. Where was I? Oh yeah, and this is like the front end we're using. Currently, it does nothing. It can't even load any posts. So that's what we're trying to fix up. We're going to hook that up to a database. So in the server.js, we're going to set up the server. So this is what we're going to start with. So we've created an app with this package called Express, which will essentially just run the app. We want it to run it on this specific port. And that will just like spin up a little server, which we can make our requests to. So here, we use app.listen from Express, and then we can pass in the port, which we defined earlier. This stuff is all what's in the doc. Sorry, my computer's like slow. And then if we do console.log, app listening on port. And if you don't know what this is like a special string you can use in Java. If you use these little backtick characters, if you use a $sign and the brackets, you can like insert a variable in here. So if you run this now, so I can go node to run a JavaScript file, server.js. Give it a second, hopefully just a second. There we go. So now it's running all this code without any problems, which means it's connected to our Mongo client successfully. And now it's running on that port 3000. And if I actually go to localhost 3000, you can see it's actually like returning me something. If I go to like, localhost 3000, 3020, right? There's nothing running on here, so it'll give me like an error 404. Whereas here, we actually like see that there is something being returned here. So that's a good start. Any questions so far? Okay. So then what we'll do is we're actually going to use this client, which we got from our MongoDB database, and we're going to connect into it. So before we do that, we've got our connection string from here. We have to create some data. So the way I like to do this, clusters. Here we have a browse collection. So if you want to get to this page, just go to the clusters tab on the left and then click on browse collections, which will allow us to interface with the data inside the cluster. Wow. That's crazy. Okay, we're back. I generally have never. Oh, dude. No way Mongo is down during the Mongo workshop. Okay, can we come back from this chat? Hold on. Let me cook. I wonder if the databases are still working, if it's just the site. It's working for you? It's working for you, you said? Okay. I guess I'll restart my Firefox? Oh, shoot. Whatever. Come on. Don't do me like this. Oh my God. All right. Technical difficulties. I'm gonna try and pull it up on like Google Chrome real quick. Hopefully that's the end of the issue. What? Oh, it's still showing my screen. You guys get to see the Zoom call. Yeah, I don't actually know my MongoDB login, but it's stored on my computer. Sign in. That is crazy that that happened. I'll see if this works. No, it seems Chrome is working, so it's fine. Okay, sorry. I generally have no clue what happened there. That was kind of strange. I tested this earlier, I swear. Why is it not? Dude, everything's going wrong. What's happening? Yeah, this is why you don't share your API key. Okay, sorry, we're back. So again, I can browse collections in the cluster. Wait, what is this? Okay, and then here, I can click add my own data. And so this will prompt me to make a database name and a collection name. So for terms of simplicity, I'll just go database name and collection name. Perfect. If you go to clusters and then browse collections, it should be like here for you. Do you see it? Let me pull up all the other stuff. Screw this. Okay, were you able to find it or? Okay. So yeah, but yeah, now we have a collection in our cluster. So sorry about that. What we'll now do is we've made our collection, or we made our cluster, and now we got to navigate into the database we just made, and then also the collection we just made. So await client.connect. It's pretty self-explanatory. It takes the string and it connects to the database. Then we specified the database, which is client.db. And then we called it database name. So we're just going to put in database name here. If you called your database something else, put it here. And then collection equals await database collection name. So collection I just defined here as a global variable. You generally wouldn't do this, and you can kind of compartmentalize things a little bit better in larger apps, but for simplicity's sake, keeping it one file, this is what we're going to do. So now, as well as just putting that file on the localhost 3000, what this will actually do is now it'll connect to our database and more specifically connect to the specific collection that we've created. So now let's have it actually give us the data from the database. So we're just going to make a very rudimentary get route. If you weren't here for the API workshop, what this basically is you just go to a certain URL and it'll know that you're trying to get data from it and it'll give you the data. So here I can call it get recent posts, async request response is the kind of like way to do it. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to make a query to the MongoDB database. So to our collection, which we defined here earlier, we're going to use .find. So this is similar to the the select that Kai was talking about earlier. This is basically just saying find anything that any entry in the collection that meets like these conditions. But since we're just passing it an empty object, we're just going to grab everything we can. So this dot notation, this is just a way to when this finishes running, it'll process what you get here with these corresponding commands. So limit 50 means we're only getting 50 things from the database. Dot sort underscore ID -1. What this is doing, since the IDs are given like in increasing sequence, if this is sorting reversely, so we get it in reverse chronological order. And that just means that when we iterate through our posts, the newest ones will be at the top. And they'll just come up later. And then to array, this just makes it easier to handle later in the code. And then res.send results.status 200. So this will send the array of the posts that we've given here and send an error or a confirmation code. So now if we save this and we relaunch our server, if we go to localhost 3000 / get recent posts, well, we see an array. It's empty because we haven't put anything into our database, but you can see that it's actually like querying our database. And in fact, if we like insert a document here, I can say like test hello. If we insert this into our database and then we refresh the server soon, maybe it will give us the new thing. Maybe not. Hold on, let me relaunch the server. Turn it off and back on. That always works. I don't know what I did. Did I? Yes.
So I noticed it in the dog, but I don't know if that's.
Okay. Yeah, so in JavaScript, you just don't really have to use semicolons. So I'm just lazy and I didn't. Oh, that would do it. Yeah, that would do it. Okay. Kenneth, yeah. This is why this guy's my PLC partner. Okay. So now this will work. There you go. It gives us our our thing that we put into the database. Okay, I'm gonna try and hurry it up. We got a little setback. And then finally, we want a way to, I'm just gonna start pasting the code. I'll just yap on my own. We want a way to actually like add to the database. So we're getting from the database, we want to add. And the way we do that is by creating a post route. Again, if you weren't here for the API workshop, this is basically just saying, if I go to this URL, I want to add something to the database. And here what we're doing is we're just taking in whatever was passed in and we're just like throwing it into the database. So this is using insert1 from Mongo. Like Kai was mentioning with SQL, there's like a billion different things you can like do. So if you want to like remove stuff from the database or like insert multiple things or like edit, this will let you do that. But here we're just going to focus on this find to search and this insert1, which will just take some data and throw it into the database. Again, Mongo, non-relational, it's really loose, right? Anything you want, you can just toss it into the database. So we're done on that. Server is done. Let me relaunch it so it's more up to date. And then let's go to the front end, this index.html. Let's see, if I go live, you're gonna be here, and I'm just gonna copy over here. Perfect. All right. So all we're gonna do is we're gonna edit the script tag. So we're just gonna be writing JavaScript. The actual front end, very simple. This is all we're gonna be using. It's gonna serve our purpose. Don't worry about any of this other stuff. We're just gonna write this script, JavaScript, to interface with our backend that we've created here. So the first thing we'll do, again, I'm gonna try and be a little quick, is we're going to create a variable username, and then we're gonna use an event listener to track when the page loads. So when the window loads, we're going to give a prompt, which will look like this, where we can enter a username, right? And that'll get stored in this username, file or variable. And then we're going to call a variable or a function called get recent posts. So what does this do? Well, obviously we want it to call this get recent posts route, but the code ends up looking like this. So I'm going to walk through what this actually does here. Oh, Jesus. Probably, that's about right. So what this does, it's a little scary, but it doesn't actually do all too much. So it takes this loading tag element here and it sets it to say loading post. So as soon as we try and get the post, it'll update it to say loading. And then this is actually like the actual fetching from the server. It just calls this fetch function on this get recent posts URL and converts it into JSON. So then what we do is we set this away from saying to loading. We just put it empty. And then all the posts here, we just set to empty as well. And then we actually iterate through the posts we got from the fetch. And what we're basically doing is we're creating a HTML element for the message and then an HTML element for the like username. And we're basically just throwing those all into this big post display div we have here. So if I save this, oh geez, CS Math Max, funny. You can see we actually have a post show up, and that's because it's trying to turn this into a post. What it looks for is like a message and an author, but since that doesn't have it, it just ends up saying this and anonymous. Again, we'll continue here. So the next thing we'll do is we're gonna actually add like posting. So we're gonna use this event listener to essentially just detect when this post button is clicked. So when this is clicked, it'll get the value inside of this field, and then it'll set that field equal to nothing, and it'll create this post where it'll store the username we had up here, as well as the input that was in this field. And then into create post, it'll just send the data. So it'll send formatted a message and then the username that sent the message. What does this create post function do? Well, it's pretty simple. All we're doing is we're just fetching this create post route that we added here. And again, anything that's in the request body, it'll just throw into the database. So what we're doing here is we're just sending into the body our data, which again was just this format of having a message and then whatever text was entered and then the username. And then another thing to note is this create post will actually, it'll call get recent posts, just so that whenever we like post a new post, it'll refresh and give us that new post as well. And that's pretty much it. Some of it's a little bit wordy, but this is all pretty much just front end stuff. The actual like database stuff is pretty simple, right? Just calling a route, and then here to interface with the database, it's like one line. And so what that ends up doing, again, I'm trying to speed through it a little bit. What we can do, let's give ourselves a username, Maximilian. And then we can, hello world, make a post here. And then it'll show up. And so, if I duplicate this tab and I log in as a different user, Max, and post this, obviously this one hasn't gotten the queue to be updated, so it won't be. But anytime you refresh, you'll get all the new posts. And, since this is a database and this isn't just stored locally, we can actually like stop the server, right? We can kill the whole application, or not the whole application, but this is completely dead. But because of the fact that it's stored on a database, if we just relaunch it, oh, Jesus. Just do it again. No. Guys, what's happening? Okay, I don't know why it suddenly just started. Kenneth, you got any recommendations for this one? Debugging 101. Turn it off and back on. Hooray, it works! Okay, I don't know what's going on today, guys. Someone really doesn't want us to do this workshop. But again, it's stored on the database, so if we refresh, we get everything we want here. Anything else I want to talk about? Again, if you want to implement like deletions and stuff, look into the MongoDB data or collection methods. There's a bajillion things you can do. And I don't know, is there a way? I think if I give you guys like my computer's IP, you can, wait. Wi-Fi settings. I want someone to try this. Do you know how I get? I don't know the command. Do you know? Oh, I got it. Okay, wait. Someone try this. Someone try this. Someone try this. If you go, I don't think it'll work because localhost, they don't have this one either. Okay, it's not gonna work. Because it's not gonna call that IP 3000, right? Whatever. I was thinking you guys could make posts here, but I don't think it'll work. If you want to try. Wait, what was it? Jesus. Try this. I think it'll let you, it might let you load it, but I think that's it. But anyway, that's pretty much it. I had to run through it because it got a little hairy. I feel like live demos are always screw up. But yeah, hopefully you guys learned something. I think it's pretty cool. Again, it's super simple, but there's like so much you can do with it. Like we've pretty much made Twitter here. Like Elon Musk, he's quaking in his boots right now. Actually, I think he's having a pretty happy day. But regardless, if you want some pizza, come and grab some. The slides are going to be posted, so if you want to pull up the doc with this, follow along on your own time, apply to be an officer, any of that stuff, you're good. I don't know, you're free to go. If you want to talk, say hi, feel free. I think we're done. We're done. Good night, everyone.